Hello and welcome to All 24 News World News program. Up next are tonight's top stories. Thousands of displaced Palestinians return to northern Gaza, a move being hailed by Hamas as victory against the occupation's displacement plans. Also coming up, 16 Palestinians are killed in Jenin as occupation forces intensify aggression, carrying out arrests, forcing residents to flee, and storming the city's hospital. Next up, in Lebanon, 24 people, including women, are killed and 134 others wounded in Zionist attacks, with the occupation forces targeting both the army and civilians in the south. Meanwhile, Washington has extended the ceasefire until February 18, aiming to ease the conflict. And M23 take control of key cities in eastern DRC as displacement continues to rise. In response, Kenya announces plans for a summit to mediate the crisis as the UN Security Council urges M23 to halt its advance. This and more shortly. Hello again and welcome back to the program. Thousands of displaced Palestinians made their way back to northern Gaza on Monday, marking a historic return after over a year of destruction and forced displacement. For many, it feels like a triumph over the Zionist war machine, a testament to their ironclad resilience and deep roots in the land they call home. For more on this story, let's go over to Salman Asib.
A massive crowd flows into the Wadi Gaza corridor after over 2 days of waiting in the cold. Tens of thousands of Palestinians finally make their way to the northern part of the Strip, an area they hold dear, from which they were forced to flee by the Zionist bombings. Although they are aware that everything has been obliterated, their neighborhoods, homes, and everything familiar to them is gone, they feel a sense of joy and triumph for having endured 15 long months of genocide.
We're very happy to be back on our land, in our homeland. A salute to the fighters, a salute to all those who fought with us, a salute to all those who helped us and supported us. Thank you to everyone who reached out to us. And we are very happy and victorious. It's true that we were tired, but in the end, we were victorious. It's a rebirth.
I feel like I was dead, and now I'm coming back to life. It's an indescribable feeling, seeing my family, my neighborhood, where I grew up and lived. We want to go back home, return to our lives. My children have never seen their house. They don't know their home. There is no more life, no more school. A generation has gone, burned, dead and erased.
Starting at 7 a.m. on Monday, Palestinian displaced people flooded the Al-Rashid Road heading north, with only pedestrians allowed on the coastal route. Those with vehicles were directed to take Salah ad-Din Street towards the center and north of the Strip. Whether on foot, by car, or by donkey, their main goal was to return home, reclaiming a sense of justice and resilience after months of displacement and hardship.
We feel happy but at the same time sad, because we have lost many of our loved ones. My son is a martyr, and I have his son with me.
Everyone was waiting for this moment with nostalgia, and we hope the future will be better because the people have paid a very high price. We have come today to take part in these historic scenes, the scenes of the return of our displaced people from the south of Gaza to the north. And for those who said there would be no return of the displaced, here they are, returning now to the north of Gaza. Honestly, we have no life outside of Gaza.
The hardships faced by the displaced during 15 months of relentless aggression were overshadowed by the breaking of the Zionist occupiers' power, unable to resist the Palestinians' determination and their refusal to accept its displacement policies. While nothing is finalized yet, these displaced individuals are eager to celebrate what feels like a major victory over their oppressors.
In the same context, the Palestinian resistance has warmly welcomed displaced people returning from southern Gaza to the north, with resistance forces stationed to help facilitate their safe return after months of forced displacement and violence. Hamas has hailed this as a victory for the Palestinian people, proclaiming it as a clear defeat for the Zionist occupation's efforts to displace them.
Scenes of the return of the masses of our people to the areas where which they were forced to flee, despite their destroyed homes, confirm the greatness of our people and their steadfastness in their land. Despite the depth of pain and tragedy, these scenes filled with the joy of return, love of the land and adherence to it, are a message to all those who bet on breaking the will of our people and displacing them from the land. We confirm that the return of our displaced people to their homes proves once again the failure of the occupation to achieve its aggressive goals of displacing our people and breaking their will to stand firm. We stand with our great people at this historic moment and call for intensifying the delivery of all aid and relief materials to all areas of the Gaza Strip.
On a different front, Hamas announced that it submitted a list of 25 living prisoners out of the 33 expected to be released in the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. The group have confirmed that the list was submitted to counter the occupation's pretext for delaying the return of displaced Palestinians to northern Gaza. Hamas also stated that prisoner exchange set for next Saturday will proceed as planned and will include 3 prisoners held by the occupation. Similarly, Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesman Majid al-Ansari announced new understandings between the Palestinian resistance and the Zionist entity aimed at advancing the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. In a post on X, al-Ansari confirmed that the agreement includes the handover of prisoner Arbil Yahoud before next Friday, with Hamas set to release 3 additional Zionist prisoners on Saturday. And in a different development, the death toll from the Zionist aggression on Jenin in the West Bank has risen to 16. The Palestinian Ministry of Health confirmed that Abdul Jawad al-Ghul passed away on Sunday from injuries sustained on the first day of the week-long assault. Occupation forces have also arrested dozens, destroyed homes and shops, and forced families to flee, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Still in Jenin, Zionist occupation forces stormed Jenin Governmental Hospital in the occupied West Bank early Monday. Palestinian media reported that the troops searched both patients and doctors inside the hospital, escalating the already tense situation in the region. Still in the West Bank, 2 Palestinians were killed and 3 others were injured in a Zionist raid on the Noor Shams camp east of Tulkarm. The Ministry of Health confirmed that a drone strike targeted a vehicle at the camp entrance, setting it ablaze and causing the casualties. The victims were rushed to Tulkarm Governmental Hospital, where 2 were declared dead and 3 others are receiving treatment. Elsewhere in Palestine still, a young Palestinian man was killed and 2 others were injured when Zionist occupation forces opened fire on them Sunday evening near the Qalandiya military checkpoint just north of the occupied Al-Quds. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, the gunfire took 1 life and left the other 2 with moderate injuries.
He was very peaceful and loved those around him and his neighbors. He was a child in every sense of the word. Everything made him laugh and everything made him cry. He was very calm with all his friends and everyone around him, and he loved life and loved to laugh.
Zionist occupation forces arrested at least 27 Palestinians, including children, on Monday during a large-scale raid across the occupied West Bank. The Palestinian news agency reported that 20 of the arrests took place in Beit Amr, north of Al-Khalil, while 5 others were detained in Salfit, north of occupied Al-Quds. Additionally, 2 Palestinians from Al-Abidiyya municipality in Al-Khalil were also taken into custody. For its part, Hamas warned that the Zionist entity against escalating its crimes and violating the sanctity of Al-Aqsa Mosque. In a statement marking the Isra and Mi'raj, Hamas emphasized that the occupation will not succeed in erasing Al-Quds's or Al-Aqsa's Arab and Islamic identity or changing the historical reality. The movement reiterated its commitment to defending the mosque and the city, vowing to continue resisting the occupation. Moving on to other topical development in the Middle East, the Lebanese Ministry of Health announced on Monday that 24 displaced persons were killed and 134 others were injured within 24 hours by the Zionist occupation forces while attempting to return to their homes in southern Lebanon. The ministry statement confirmed that 6 of those killed were women, and among the wounded, 12 children and 14 women were injured by the occupation's fire, which targeted the returnees as they tried to reach their still occupied villages and towns. Likewise, the Lebanese Ministry of Health reported 2 deaths and 17 injured, including a child and a paramedic, after Zionist forces opened fire on displaced people in southern Lebanon. The attack, carried out by the occupation drones and aircraft, targeted returnees and a construction team in the Nabatea Governorate. On Monday, the occupation also fired on Lebanese army personnel near Mays al-Jabal and civilians in Dahira, close to the occupied Palestine border. In reaction, Hezbollah called on the international community to take responsibility for Zionist violations and ongoing breaches of the ceasefire in Lebanon. In a statement on Monday, the party urged all Lebanese to unite with the people of the South in resisting the aggression. It also emphasized the responsibility of the international community, particularly the countries sponsoring the ceasefire agreement, to ensure the occupation withdraws from Lebanese territories and halts its violations and crimes. In a related context, the White House announced the extension of the ceasefire between Lebanon and the Zionist entity until February 18, with negotiations set to begin on the return of the Lebanese prisoners captured after October 7, 2023. In Beirut, caretaker Prime Minister Miqati confirmed Lebanon's commitment to the ceasefire agreement, emphasizing the nation's sovereignty and security. He also assured that talks would continue under the new deadline set after U.S. discussions. Shifting focus to another development now, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune met with Tunisian Foreign Minister Mohamed Ali Nafti and his delegation, discussing ways to strengthen strategic cooperation between Algeria and Tunisia. The meeting, which also included the principal private secretary to the presidency Boualem and Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf, highlighted the importance of enhancing bilateral relations. Following the discussions, Nafti confirmed Tunisia's commitment to deepening ties through an effective and ambitious action plan.
مثل اللقاء سانحة أطلعت فخامة الرئيس على
The meeting was an opportunity to inform the President of the Republic about the agenda of discussion I will have with Ahmed Attaf, Minister of State and Minister of Foreign Affairs. This strategy we hope will strengthen bilateral cooperation to meet our ambitions, with strategic collaboration at all levels, starting with proper preparation for upcoming bilateral events. The meeting with the President was also an occasion to review many Arab and regional issues, reflecting the importance placed on consultations and collaboration between the two countries and their leaders. It reaffirmed their contribution to peace, security and solidarity-based development in our region and across the world.
متضامنة في منطقتنا وفي العالم بأسره.
Equally, Algeria and Tunisia discussed their strong brotherly relations and ways to enhance them following the directives of their leaders. The talks took place on Monday in Algiers, where Algerian Minister of State and Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf met with Tunisian Foreign Minister Mohamed Ali Nafti, who is on an official visit. The meeting served as a valuable opportunity for consultation and coordination on various pressing issues affecting both countries. In another development, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune confirmed on Sunday that the review of the partnership agreement between or with the European Union is based on realistic economic data. A statement from the Algerian presidency emphasized that the review is not intended to signal conflict, but rather to strengthen Algeria's positive relations with the EU, focusing on mutual benefit. President Tebboune pointed out that the agreement signed in 2005 has not been updated despite significant structural changes in the Algerian economy, specifically with the country diversifying beyond hydrocarbons. Still with Algeria-related news, the African Parliament strongly condemned the European Parliament's interference in Algeria's internal affairs, describing it as a violation of international conventions that safeguard state sovereignty. In a statement, the African Parliament expressed full solidarity with Algeria and called on the European Parliament to respect the sovereignty of African nations and the independence of their institutions, especially the judiciary. And speaking of Africa, the M23 armed movement announced its control over Goma, the largest city in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, forcing thousands to flee and sparking fears of regional war. The DRC has accused Rwanda of backing the movement in a bid to seize control of the region's valuable resources. Zarfar Jenny has more on this story now.
Armed groups from the March 23 movement, or M23, have seized control of Goma, a key city in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The coalition led by M23 has called on Congolese forces in the city to surrender to avoid bloodshed. The situation escalated following intense clashes between the M23 and Congolese troops, resulting in the death of 13 UN peacekeepers, according to UN officials.
The European Union closely follows the crisis in eastern Congo. Ministers urge Rwanda to halt its support for rebels and withdraw its troops. Attacks on UN peacekeepers are unacceptable.
Tens of thousands of Congolese citizens are fleeing eastern towns as explosions and gunfire echo in Goma. In Bukavu, eastern Congo, massive crowds demonstrated in support of peace while urging the government to act decisively against the advancing rebels.
We are protesting here in Bukavu because we are angry to see M23 in our country. We support our soldiers and say to the government, think of them, do not retreat, recruit us, we are ready to fight.
At a press conference at the United Nations headquarters, top officials addressed the growing crisis. They urged the coordinated effort to stabilize the situation, highlighting the dire humanitarian impact of the conflict.
The situation on the ground obviously remains volatile and dangerous. The humanitarian challenges are daunting, and certainly the risk of a broader humanitarian disaster are very high. And of course, we also want to avoid risk of a broader war.
The humanitarian situation in and around Goma is extremely worrying, with new threshold of violence and suffering reached today as active zones of combat have spread to all quarters of the city, all the neighborhoods of the city. Civilians are taking the brunt of the escalating hostilities.
As the situation in eastern Congo intensifies, international leaders are calling for an urgent diplomatic solution to avoid further destabilization and alleviate the human suffering unfolding across the region.
In a related story, Kenyan President William Ruto announced that the President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo will meet with his Rwandan counterpart next Wednesday during an extraordinary East African Community Summit. Speaking in Nairobi on Monday, Ruto described the situation in the DRC as highly complex, highlighting the urgent need for diplomatic efforts to resolve the ongoing crisis in the region.
On the situation in Eastern DRC, agreed under the framework of the East African Community to convene an urgent extraordinary meeting and summit on the situation in Eastern DRC on Wednesday. I have discussed the summit meeting for Wednesday both with President Paul Kagame and President Felix Tshisekedi, and both of them have confirmed their participation in the summit on Wednesday.
In a similar reaction, the United Nations Security Council called on Monday for M23 forces in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to halt their attack and advance towards Goma. In a statement, the Council expressed concern over the manipulation of the GPS technology to support M23's operations in North Kivu, warning that it jeopardizes civil aviation safety and hinders the delivery of humanitarian aid to displaced people. In another global news story, a looming trade conflict between the U.S. and Colombia was diffused after Colombia agreed to allow U.S. military flights to land with deported migrants, bringing an end to a bitter standoff that had escalated into threats of tariffs and economic retaliation. Yasin Erikti reports now.
A trade war between the U.S. and Colombia was narrowly averted after the Colombian government caved in, agreeing to let U.S. military planes land with deported migrants. The standoff kicked off when President Gustavo Petro blocked 2 U.S. flights, protesting the treatment of Colombian deportees.
It's too early to say if this is going to be just an instrument of negotiation or if we're going to see mass deportations and America First policies being implemented all over. We still have to wait to see what is going to happen in the long term and to see if America First policies are really going to be a reality and will be applied in general and have the effects that President Trump is promising.
In retaliation, the U.S. threatened a hefty 25% tariff on Colombian goods, making the situation tense. The dispute quickly spiraled, with Petro hinting at hitting back with tariffs of his own.
It affects us. It will affect all people exporting their products. This will put a halt on Colombian commerce with the United States. This will completely affect us. The problem is that Mr. Petro needs to think with a cold head, not ideologically, but regarding what is best for our country. I think he needs to think more.
However, a deal was struck when Colombia agreed to accept the deportees without delay, even on U.S. military aircraft. For its part, the White House called it a win for Trump's hardline immigration policies, though tariffs are still on standby. Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo confirmed the impasse was resolved, with Colombia even offering to send its own plane for repatriations.
El gobierno de Colombia informa.
Colombia's government informs it has gotten over its impasse with the governments of the United States. In this context, Colombian Foreign Minister Luis Gilberto Murillo and Ambassador Daniela Garcia Pena will travel in the coming days to Washington, D.C. to have high-level meetings that follow up on the agreements resulting from the joint work that led to the exchange of diplomatic notes between the two governments. We will continue to receive Colombians that return as deportees, ensuring dignified conditions for them as citizens with rights.
While the crisis seems to have cooled off, the U.S. stuck to its guns, keeping visa restrictions on Colombian officials until the first deportation flight touches down.
Elsewhere in Europe, the Russian presidency announced that it is still waiting for what it called signals from the United States regarding a potential meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov reiterated on Monday that President Putin is ready for talks with Trump, adding that the same willingness exists on the American side, according to Peskov. Now let's get more international news stories with Sofian Kanturi in the News in Brief now.
Iranian officials deny seeking direct negotiations with the U.S. through European mediators. Parliamentary spokesperson Ibrahim Ridai stated that Tehran has no bilateral talks with Washington and emphasized that any negotiations will be strictly within the P5+1 framework. The European Union extended broad sanctions on Russia for another 6 months after Hungary approved the decision in exchange for energy security guarantees. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas confirmed on X that bloc's foreign ministers agreed to the extension to curb Russia's war revenues. Berlin public transport workers staged a one-day strike on Monday, shutting down subway lines and most services. The Verdi union demands higher wages for 16,000 employees in ongoing talks with the BVG. Belarusian Central Election Commission Chief Igor Karpenko announced on Monday that incumbent President Alexander Lukashenko won the presidential election with 86.82% of the vote. Karpenko stated that voter turnout reached 75.49%. Lukashenko has been in power for 6 consecutive terms.
And that wraps up our news program for tonight. Thank you for watching. Good night.